So we've just passed St. George's Day, and given what appears to be a certain resurgence of interest in this saint, sometimes a rather controversial resurgence, as in the case of England, I thought it might be an idea to make a couple of videos on devotion to this saint in Venice. We're looking here at the Basilica of San Giorgio Maggiore, the great church by Palladio, certainly the most beautifully located church in the city. I'm not going to talk about this church. It would be difficult to do it justice in a short video. Instead, I'm going to focus my attention on sculptural representations of the saint in the area between San Marco and the Arsenale. That is to say, around the church of San Giorgio dei Greci, the Greek church, and the Scuola di San Giorgio degli Schiavoni, the Dalmatian Institute. So we'll start with the Greek church, San Giorgio dei Greci. So the other major church in the city named after the saint. So here it is with its leaning tower. Next to it is the Istituto Ellenico, and attached to that is also a small museum of icons. And of course, one of the most prominent icons, as you'll see on this poster here, is devoted to St. George. So we're not going to go into the church or into the museum, as I've decided to confine myself to external sculptures. And so we'll make our way towards the courtyard in which the church stands. So here is the church in the courtyard, and we're going to make our way around the side of the church towards this very fine wellhead. And we're going to go around to the other side of the well to look at the carving here, which is, as you can see, a very fine representation of St. George, spear in hand, killing the dragon. But that's not all. There's also another marble relief here on this side wall, above this window. St. George appears here to have lost his spear, but I think we can assume that he is supposed to be holding it and transfixing the poor beast. As you can see from the agony of the thrashing dragon. Not a fine sculpture. I particularly like the rearing horse. Probably very startled by what's going on beneath him. But devotion to the saint isn't just confined to the church buildings. Here we are in the Salizzada dei Greci, that is the paved street of the Greeks, and behind the church itself. And if we look up this wall, we can see another bas-relief of the saint and the dying dragon. It's in Istrian stone, like most of these sculptures. However, for some reason, and perhaps it's really rather effective, the actual tip of the spear, which has transfixed the dragon's throat, is in metal, as also is his halo. I don't know if you can see that. There is a date below the sculpture, and I'm not sure if it's legible, but it is 1658. So now we're turning off the Salizzada dei Greci and entering the Calle dei Greci. And we're going to go on down to the archway at the end. The wall here on the right is the wall of the courtyard of the church. And in fact, you can just see the top of the church there. But we're going to have a look at another fine bas-relief of St. George the Dragon above this archway. There it is. A really very splendid sculpture. This time we can see details of the saint's armor, and we can't see very much of the dragon itself. But the saint is very splendid in all his accoutrements, and this sculpture is conveniently dated for us. You can see the date below, which is 1692. So not far from the Calle dei Greci is the quiet Corte Bollani, and we'll look here at one final image of San Giorgio, and his dragon. And here it is above this window. This is probably not a very old work of art. It perhaps dates from the 19th century, when imitations of art styles from earlier periods became quite fashionable. But nonetheless, it has a certain charm. So you may have noticed something, that in none of the representations of the dragon is it shown as breathing flames. You may think it's because it's difficult to represent flames in stone. But in fact, none of the paintings of St. George and the Dragon show the dragon as breathing fire. This is because in the original legend, as collected by Jacopo da Voragine in the 13th century, the dragon is described as breathing pestilence and causing plagues, and there's no indication that it had anything to do with fire. And by way of proof that sculpture can show flames, if we look above this, we will see an image high up on the wall of a salamander, a mythical creature that lived and thrived in the flames, and therefore taken as a symbol of endurance and faith. Francis I of France took it as his own personal emblem, and St. Augustine uses the salamander as evidence that the soul can thrive and be purified in the flames of purgatory. So although it's a rather battered work, it perhaps once adorned a fireplace, which may explain its appearance, and it probably dates from the 17th century, it's a very striking piece, and it shows that sculpture can show flames if the artist really wants to. And so I think it's quite a strong image to end the video on.